After many years of meditation and all the twists and turns of life, I'm now in the grip of intense fear and anxiety.
I got 10 minutes, so I'm going to waste it telling you why I'm going to talk about what I'm talking about.
By asking nonsensical questions, by making absurd remarks.
You're totally at the mercy of it, so it only exists in your mind.
It's never going to get any better.
It seems it was always there, only more intense now.
So there's a moral argument which says that if you do not initiate force against others, you're not doing anything wrong fundamentally. It may be unwise, but it's not immoral. And so if I stab myself, nobody charges me with assault. And if I ingest a drug that may not be great for me in the long term, but enhances my happiness in the moment, maybe something worthy of intervention. It may be unwise, but it's not immoral and worthy of jail. There's an old saying from Confucius says, the beginning of wisdom is to call things by their proper names. By their proper names. The war on drugs is not the proper name. It's not a war on drugs. If I get caught with a pound of cocaine, it's not the cocaine that goes to jail. It's not a war on drugs. It's a war on people. And it's a war on a very specific kind of person. It's the addicts. So who are the addicts? The addicts, to put it very briefly, are people whose brain has been harmed by a specific set of circumstances, and the addicts of opiates and of stimulants like cocaine are attempting to self-medicate a very specific brain problem. And so we're born too early, and so the majority of our brain development occurs after we're born. And there are very specific systems in the brain around emotional self-regulation. And so we need motivation, which comes from the dopamine system. And we need self-soothing or calming down, which comes from the endorphin system. Now, if you take a rat and you genetically engineer it to have no dopamine, then if you feed it, you put food in its mouth, it will be like, hey, thanks. But if you put food like 2 inches from its mouth, it will not move to get it. It will actually starve to death 2 inches from food because it has no motivation. So you can genetically engineer problems in these stimulation and self-soothing systems within the brain and see very specifically what happens. And when baby monkeys are groomed by their moms, they produce more endorphins, the happy, warm hugs and all that kind of stuff. Now, if when you are both in your mother's womb and shortly after birth for the first couple of years, if you're exposed to extraordinary stressors in life, it could be war, it could be child abuse, it could be famine, it could be disease, it could be, the general social decay that's hitting so many Western cities in certain places. If after you're born you experience extraordinary stressors, these systems do not work well. You are short on dopamine and you are short on endorphins. So if you are exposed to these in an external way, right, if you are exposed to any drugs which boost endorphin levels, the opiates, or if you're exposed to drugs which improve your dopamine levels, you feel normal for the first time in your life, right? Most people with sort of happiness is up around here, right? People who are born in traumatic situations, their happiness is down here. They take a drug, an illegal drug, and they realize, they feel what it means to be normally happy for the first time in their life. And then when they go back down, and they go back down lower than where they came from, they realize the agony of their existence probably for the first time. So what do? They want to get back to that. Do you know that the brain does not distinguish between physical and emotional pain? It's exactly the same centers that light up. A really painful rejection is processed by the brain in the same way as getting stabbed. So these people who've grown up in these traumatic environments have a susceptibility. This is where the addiction comes from. Their brains don't work. You could really look at it as a physical brain injury. Now, people who are attempting to self-medicate a physical brain injury should not be sent to jail at all. There is a sadism in the war on drugs in that we are finding people who were traumatized as children, who are self-medicating themselves the only way they know how, the only way they can, and we are subjecting them to persecution, confinement, trauma, stress, which is exactly the conditions which brought about their susceptibility to addiction in the first place.